The sixth COM task is a laundry list of additional tasks. It includes being a COM liaison, being a part of the interview team, monitoring pastoral agreements, monitoring Board of Pensions information, taking care of our CREs, our validated and at-large ministers, and finally managing and monitoring conflict within our congregations. Let's start with the work of being a COM liaison, where we connect with our congregations, our pastors, and our clerks of session. The most important work of a COM liaison is to know the church and be known by the church. We can only influence a relationship that we are actually in. We cannot influence a relationship we don't have. So the first job of a liaison is to develop a relationship. Sometimes you will already know the church, or you will already know the pastor where you are their church's liaison. But if you don't know the pastor, if you don't know the church, it's on you to get to know them, to introduce yourself to them. You can do that by writing a note, by writing an email, by picking up the phone, by scheduling a visit for coffee. Don't overwhelm the pastors or the clerks with your presence, but make sure that you know them and are known by them. Then, periodically, you will do what used to be called a triennial visit, but we don't do those every 3 years anymore. We do them periodically. So usually once a year, but not necessarily. Sometimes it'll be sooner than that. Sometimes it'll be a little bit later than that, but only a little bit. And we have a document called Periodic Visits that will take you through what's to be a part of that, where you gather with the session and just ask how things are going, ask how the presbytery can be supportive of them, ask if they have any questions of the presbytery that you might bring back to the COM. And so you want to get to know them and make sure that things are going okay. It's a touch base type of visit. And it's also a time for them to be able to have a chance to celebrate and tell someone from outside of their church all the good things that are happening in their ministry and mission. And finally, as a COM liaison, you will be called upon at times as part of a cluster work where you're gathered in with other COM liaisons to approve a myth, to approve a mission study, or to interview a candidate who's going to be entering this presbytery as a new pastor. All pastors transferring in from another presbytery must be interviewed for membership, and this interview is done by what we call an interview team. It is mostly welcome and hospitality, but also a little bit of accountability. The interview of pastors for membership in the presbytery is usually done by the cluster. But if it's not done by the cluster, really anyone can serve on the interview team. We like to have 3 people do the interview, and the interview is just a review where they're at biblically, theologically, where they're at with worship and sacraments and polity, to make sure that we're comfortable with them being a full member of our presbytery. And the interview team, whether it's done by an official team or in the cluster, or just the gathering of people that we can get together for a Zoom meeting or in-person meeting, they will recommend that person to the COM for the full COM to take a vote. The COM is responsible for approving all pastoral agreements. In the Reformed tradition, of which the Presbyterian Church is a part, we believe the pastoral covenant is a tripartite covenant between the pastor, the congregation, and the presbytery. So this is our part of the accountability process, but also part of the spiritual covenant process of the relationship between pastor, presbytery, and congregation. Virtually every month on the COM agenda, there will be in the consent agenda the approval of certain contracts. So as we approve contracts, the thing that we're going to be looking at is to make sure that all the boxes are checked and the minimum terms of call are being observed. This is the accountability and protection portion of the COM work, to make sure that both churches and pastors are not being taken advantage of. COM approves not only the terms of call for permanent pastors, but also the terms of call for designated, interim, and supply pastors or temporary pastors. And whenever the terms of call come up for the annual review, COM needs to be a part of that and approve those terms. This has been a long presentation. I thank you for your patience. I've thrown a lot of material your way. There's a lot of information to manage and to sort through. I guess you have questions. If so, let the discussion begin.